What if everything you're stressing about right now is already taken care of by Allah? Sit with that thought for a moment, not just as a sentence you hear, but as a truth you allow yourself to feel. Because most of what weighs on your chest isn't the present moment, it's the fear of what hasn't even happened yet. Your mind runs ahead of your life, creating scenarios, imagining outcomes, and carrying burdens that don't even exist. And in doing so, you exhaust your heart over a future that is still completely in the hands of Allah. The anxiety you feel late at night, when everything is quiet but your thoughts are loud, comes from trying to control what was never yours to control. You replay conversations, you predict failures, you question whether things will work out, whether you'll succeed, whether you'll be okay. But in all of that thinking, there is one thing you forget: the one who controls outcomes is not you. The one who writes your story has never been absent, never been unaware, and never been late. Then there is your past, the part of your life that feels heavy no matter how much time passes. The mistakes you revisit, the regrets that linger, the moments you wish you could erase. You carry them like a weight tied to your identity, as if they define who you are and where you're allowed to go. But what you fail to see is that Allah does not see you the way you see yourself. Where you see failure, Allah sees a servant who can return. Where you see distance, Allah sees a path back. You move forward in life, but something inside you keeps pulling you back. That quiet voice reminds you of everything you did wrong, making you feel like you've already gone too far. And slowly, without realizing it, that voice begins to weaken your trust. You still say you trust Allah, but your heart hesitates. It wonders if that trust really applies to you, to your situation, to your story. And that's where the real question begins. Do you truly trust Allah, or do you only trust Him when things make sense to you? Because it's easy to say, I trust Allah, when life is going the way you planned. It's easy when doors are opening, when everything feels aligned, when you feel in control. But true trust is revealed when everything becomes uncertain, when plans fall apart, and when you're left standing in a reality you didn't choose. Real trust is not about understanding, it's about surrender. It's believing that even when you don't understand what's happening, there is wisdom behind it. It's knowing that Allah sees what you cannot see, that He knows what you do not know, and that His plan is not limited by your perspective. What feels like a delay to you may actually be perfect timing. What feels like loss may actually be protection. Sometimes doors close in your life, and you interpret that as rejection. You wonder why something didn't work out, why something was taken away, why things didn't go the way you hoped. But what if those closed doors were actually shielding you from something you were not meant to face? What if what you're grieving was never meant to be part of your story in the first place? Allah's protection does not always feel like comfort, it often feels like confusion before clarity. Your heart feels heavy right now because you are trying to carry responsibilities that do not belong to you. You are trying to manage outcomes, control timelines, and secure a future that has already been written. But your role was never to control, it was to trust, to act, and to leave the rest to Allah. The weight you feel is not because life is too hard, it's because you're holding on to what you were meant to release. Imagine what it would feel like to finally let go. Not to give up, but to surrender. To do your part, but stop trying to control the results. To trust that every delay, every redirection, every unexpected turn is part of a plan that is far greater than your understanding. That kind of trust doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your heart. It replaces anxiety with calm, fear with certainty, and doubt with peace. And when you truly reach that point, something inside you shifts. You no longer panic over what's coming, because you know it's already in Allah's control. You no longer feel trapped by your past, because you know Allah's mercy is greater than your mistakes. You no longer feel lost, because even in uncertainty, you trust that you are being guided. And in that moment, trust is no longer just something you say, it becomes something you live.
What if the delay
something you
is
feel,
not denial,
and something that
what if it is
transforms
something
the way
far
you see
deeper,
everything
far
around you?
more
Intentional than you could ever imagine. Because when you look at your life from your limited perspective, all you see is effort without outcome, without visible response, and doors that refuse to open. But what you cannot see is what Allah is doing behind those closed doors, in moments you don't witness, in ways your mind cannot yet understand. You measure your life by results, but Allah measures it by wisdom. You count how many times you tried, how many times you failed, how long you've been waiting. But Allah sees something else entirely: your patience, your sincerity, your reliance, and the quiet strength it takes for you to keep going when everything inside you feels like stopping. And sometimes, what you think is a delay is actually preparation. Because what you are asking for may require a version of you that you have not yet become. Think about this. If everything you asked for was given to you instantly, without delay, without struggle, without growth, would you truly be ready to carry it? Would you appreciate it the same way? Or would it break you because you were not prepared for the responsibility that comes with it? Allah does not just give, He prepares. And that preparation often feels like waiting. Those closed doors you keep facing are not always obstacles, sometimes they are directions. Each no is not pushing you away from something good, it is guiding you towards something better, something more aligned with what is truly written for you. But because you cannot see the full picture, you interpret redirection as rejection. And that's where your heart begins to struggle. Because you are standing between effort and outcome, doing everything you can, yet seeing nothing change. It feels like you are stuck in place, like your life is not moving forward. But movement is not always visible. Growth is not always loud. Sometimes, the biggest changes are happening within you, shaping your patience, strengthening your trust, and building a that can rely on Allah without conditions. When you raise your hands in dua and nothing seems to happen, it does not mean your dua is unanswered. It means it is being handled in a way you cannot see. Allah hears every word, every whisper, every tear. And His response is not limited to giving you exactly what you asked for, exactly when you asked for it. Sometimes the response is a delay to protect you. Sometimes it is a redirection to something better. And sometimes it is something saved for you at the perfect time or even in the hereafter. You are not standing at a closed door because you are forgotten. You are standing there because Allah is teaching you something that cannot be learned in ease. That feeling of knocking again and again, even when your heart is tired, that is not weakness. That is faith, because faith is not proven when things are easy, it is proven when you continue despite not seeing the outcome. And yes, your heart gets tired. That is real. The heaviness you feel is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you care, that you are trying, that you are holding on. But within that tiredness, there is something powerful. You still haven't walked away. You still turn back to Allah. You still make dua. You still hope. And that itself is a sign that Allah has not let go of you. What if the reason things are not working out the way you planned is because your plan is not what's best for you? What if the door you are desperately trying to open leads to something that would have hurt you, distracted you, or taken you further away from what you truly need? Allah sees outcomes you cannot see. He knows consequences you cannot predict. So the delay you are experiencing right now is not empty time. It is meaningful. It is shaping you, protecting you, and guiding you, even if it feels silent. And one day, when things finally unfold, when a door finally opens in a way you did not expect, you will look back at this moment and realize that nothing was wasted. Not the waiting, not the tears, not even the confusion. Everything was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. So don't let the silence make you lose trust. Don't let the delay make you feel abandoned. And don't let the closed doors convince you that nothing is happening. Because Allah is always working, even when you cannot see it. And maybe, just maybe, what you are waiting for is already on its way to you, being prepared in a way that is far more perfect than anything you could have planned yourself. So what does it truly mean to trust Allah? Because this word, tawakkul, is often spoken so lightly, yet lived so rarely in its true depth. It's not just a concept you repeat when things go wrong. It's a state of the heart, a way of living, a lens through which you begin to see everything in your life differently. Tawakkul begins with understanding your role and Allah's role. Your role is limited, you act, you strive, you make choices within your capacity. But the outcome, the result, the unseen consequences of every step, those belong entirely to Allah. The problem is, most people blur this line. They either abandon effort and call it trust, or they cling to control and call it responsibility. But true tawakkul is knowing exactly where your effort ends and where your trust begins. When the Prophet said, "Tie your camel and trust Allah," he was teaching a principle that applies to every part of life. You don't sit and wait for it to find you. You go out, you search, you work, you build. You don't ignore opportunities and expect success. You prepare yourself, you grow, you take action. But after doing all of that, you don't let your heart become dependent on the result. You don't let your peace rise and fall based on what happens next. Because the moment your heart becomes attached to outcomes, anxiety takes over. You begin to think that everything depends on you, your decisions, your timing, your effort. And when things don't go as planned, you feel like everything is collapsing. But tawakkul frees you from that burden. It reminds you that outcomes were never yours to control in the first place. There is a quiet strength in someone who truly understands tawakkul. From the outside, they look like anyone else. They work, they try, they plan. But inside, there is a deep calm. Not because their life is perfect, but because there is not tied to perfection. It is tied to Allah. They are not shaken by every delay, not broken by every closed door, not lost in every moment of uncertainty. This doesn't mean they don't feel fear or disappointment. They do. They feel the weight of life just like anyone else. But what makes them different is where they take those feelings. They don't let fear turn into despair. They don't let disappointment turn into hopelessness. Instead, they return to Allah again and again, reminding themselves that there is wisdom even when they cannot see it. Tawakkul is what allows you to move forward without being paralyzed by, what if? What if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? These questions don't disappear, but they lose their power over you. Because your heart begins to respond with something stronger. Even if it doesn't go my way, it will go the way Allah has written. And that is enough. And this is where real freedom begins. Because when you truly internalize this, you stop living in constant fear of the future. You stop replaying the past with regret. You start living in the present, with effort in your actions and trust in your heart. You still plan, but you are not consumed by your plans. You still hope, but your hope is rooted in Allah, not in outcomes. The beauty of tawakkul is that it transforms even your struggles into something meaningful. A delay is no longer just a delay, it becomes part of a process. A closed door is no longer just rejection, it becomes redirection. A hardship is no longer just pain, it becomes a means of growth, purification, and to Allah. Everything begins to carry purpose. And slowly, without even realizing it, your relationship with life begins to change. You are no longer constantly fighting reality. You are no longer resisting what you cannot control. Instead, you flow with it, trusting that every turn, every shift, every unexpected moment is being guided with precision and wisdom. When tawakkul settles deeply in your heart, you begin to understand a powerful truth. Peace does not come from having everything figured out. It comes from knowing that Allah has already taken care of what you cannot figure out. And that knowledge creates a calm that no external situation can take away. So you continue to show up. You continue to try. You continue to make dua, to seek, to strive. But you do it with a that is lighter, freer, and more at peace. Because you are no longer carrying the weight of outcomes, you are carrying trust. And that trust changes everything. There is a question that quietly settles in the heart during difficult moments. Why is this happening to me? It doesn't always come out loud, but you feel it in your silence, in your confusion, in the heaviness that lingers when life doesn't go the way you expected. When things fall apart, when pain stretches longer than you thought you could, it's natural to assume that something is wrong, that maybe you've done something to deserve this. But what if the way you see hardship is incomplete? Because tests are not random. They are not meaningless interruptions in your life. And they are not sent to break you. They are sent with purpose, precise, intentional, and tailored specifically for you. Allah tests you for growth. There are parts of your character, your strength, your faith that simply cannot develop in comfort. Ease does not reveal who you truly are, it is pressure that does. It is in those moments where you feel stretched beyond your limits that you begin to discover a strength you didn't know existed within you. What you thought would destroy you begins to shape you instead. Allah tests you for purification. Not every hardship is a punishment. Many are a form of mercy that doesn't feel like mercy at first. The pain you endure, the struggles you face, they are quietly removing burdens you cannot see. Sins are erased, hearts are softened, and souls are cleansed through trials that feel heavy in the moment but carry deep within them. Nothing you go through is wasted, not even your tears. And Allah tests you for elevation. There are levels of closeness to Him, ranks in Jannah, that cannot be reached by actions alone. They are reached through patience, through standing firm when everything inside you feels like collapsing, through choosing faith when your circumstances make it difficult. What you are going through right now may be raising you to a place you could have never reached in ease. And then comes the realization that changes everything. Allah tests those He loves. Not those He has abandoned. Not those He has forgotten. The very test you are questioning may actually be a sign that you are being seen, that you are being shaped, that you are being prepared for something greater than you can currently understand. Look at the life of Prophet Ayub, as his health was taken from him, his wealth disappeared, his family was lost. And this wasn't for a short period, it was years of deep, continuous hardship. Yet through all of it, his heart remained connected to Allah. He did not turn away in bitterness, he turned toward Allah with patience and humility. And because of that, his story became a timeless example of what it means to endure with faith. And reflect on Prophet Yusuf, as betrayed by those closest to him, thrown into a well, separated from his family, and later imprisoned for something he did not do. From the outside, it looked like a life filled with injustice and pain. But every moment, every setback, every hardship was leading him exactly where he was meant to be. What seemed like a series of losses was actually a carefully planned path toward honor, authority, and purpose. And this is the part that is hardest to see when you are living your own story. Because when you are in the middle of a test, it doesn't feel like growth or purification or elevation. It feels like confusion. It feels like being stuck. It feels like doors closing without explanation. But what if what you are experiencing is not you being pushed down, but being positioned? What if what feels like loss is actually protection from something you cannot see? What if what feels like delay is actually perfect alignment with a timing greater than your own? What if what feels like a closed door is saving you from a path that was never meant for you? Sit with that for a moment. Because what feels like punishment might actually be preparation. Preparation for a version of you that is stronger, more patient, more connected to Allah. A version of you that is ready, not just for what you want, but for what is truly best for you. And one day, when the pieces finally come together, when the path becomes clear, when you look back at everything you once questioned, you won't just understand why it happened. You will feel something deeper. Gratitude, that it did. There is a question that quietly settles in the heart during difficult moments. Why is this happening to me? It doesn't always come out loud, but you feel it in your silence, in your confusion, in the heaviness that lingers when life doesn't go the way you expected. When things fall apart, when pain stretches longer than you thought you could, it's natural to assume that something is wrong, that maybe you've done something to deserve this. But what if the way you see hardship is incomplete? Because tests are not random. They are not meaningless interruptions in your life. And they are not sent to break you. They are sent with purpose, precise, intentional, and tailored specifically for you. Allah tests you for growth. There are parts of your character, your strength, your faith that simply cannot develop in comfort. Ease does not reveal who you truly are, it is pressure that does. It is in those moments where you feel stretched beyond your limits that you begin to discover a strength you didn't know existed within you. What you thought would destroy you begins to shape you instead. Allah tests you for purification. Not every hardship is a punishment. Many are a form of mercy that doesn't feel like mercy at first. The pain you endure, the struggles you face, they are quietly removing burdens you cannot see. Sins are erased, hearts are softened, and souls are cleansed through trials that feel heavy in the moment but carry deep within them. Nothing you go through is wasted, not even your tears. And Allah tests you for elevation. There are levels of closeness to Him, ranks in Jannah, that cannot be reached by actions alone. They are reached through patience, through standing firm when everything inside you feels like collapsing, through choosing faith when your circumstances make it difficult. What you are going through right now may be raising you to a place you could have never reached in ease. And then comes the realization that changes everything. Allah tests those He loves. Not those He has abandoned. Not those He has forgotten. The very test you are questioning may actually be a sign that you are being seen, that you are being shaped, that you are being prepared for something greater than you can currently understand. Look at the life of Prophet Ayub, as his health was taken from him, his wealth disappeared, his family was lost. And this wasn't for a short period, it was years of deep, continuous hardship. Yet through all of it, his heart remained connected to Allah. He did not turn away in bitterness, he turned toward Allah with patience and humility. And because of that, his story became a timeless example of what it means to endure with faith. And reflect on Prophet Yusuf, as betrayed by those closest to him, thrown into a well, separated from his family, and later imprisoned for something he did not do. From the outside, it looked like a life filled with injustice and pain. But every moment, every setback, every hardship was leading him exactly where he was meant to be. What seemed like a series of losses was actually a carefully planned path toward honor, authority, and purpose. And this is the part that is hardest to see when you are living your own story. Because when you are in the middle of a test, it doesn't feel like growth or purification or elevation. It feels like confusion. It feels like being stuck. It feels like doors closing without explanation. But what if what you are experiencing is not you being pushed down, but being positioned? What if what feels like loss is actually protection from something you cannot see? What if what feels like delay is actually perfect alignment with a timing greater than your own? What if what feels like a closed door is saving you from a path that was never meant for you? Sit with that for a moment. Because what feels like punishment might actually be preparation. Preparation for a version of you that is stronger, more patient, more connected to Allah. A version of you that is ready, not just for what you want, but for what is truly best for you. And one day, when the pieces finally come together, when the path becomes clear, when you look back at everything you once questioned, you won't just understand why it happened. You will feel something deeper. Gratitude, that it did. There is a hidden danger that many people don't recognize until they are already deep inside it. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds slowly, quietly, through thoughts that feel normal at first, even logical. It begins in the mind, but if it is not stopped, it slowly reaches the heart. It starts with overthinking. At first, it feels like responsibility. You tell yourself you are just being careful, just planning, just trying to make the right decisions. But gradually, your mind stops resting. Every situation becomes something to analyze. Every choice becomes something to over-evaluate. You don't just think, you overthink. You don't just consider outcomes, you try to predict and control them. And without realizing it, your mind becomes a place where fear grows faster than clarity. You replay conversations that already ended. You imagine outcomes that haven't happened. You build entire scenarios in your head, most of them rooted in worry rather than reality. And the strange thing is, overthinking never truly gives you certainty. It only creates more questions, more doubt, more fear. The more you try to think your way into control, the more trapped you feel inside your own thoughts. Then slowly, that mental exhaustion turns into emotional weight. Stress begins to settle in your chest. Anxiety becomes familiar. Even in moments of stillness, your heart doesn't feel still. You wake up with worry before the day even begins, and you fall asleep carrying the same heaviness you woke up with. It's not always visible to others, but inside, it feels like something is constantly pressing down on you. Like you are carrying a burden that never gets lighter. And over time, something even more subtle begins to happen. Hope starts to weaken. Not in a dramatic way. Not all at once. Just slowly, quietly. You stop expecting good outcomes the way you used to. You begin preparing yourself for disappointment before anything even happens. You lower your expectations to protect yourself from pain. And without realizing it, your heart starts to distance itself from the very source it was created to rely on. In that vulnerable space, whispers begin to grow stronger. They don't always sound like words. Sometimes they feel like emotions, like sudden waves of doubt that seem to come from nowhere. You're on your own. Things won't change. Maybe help isn't coming. These thoughts don't always announce themselves as lies. They arrive quietly, disguised as realism, as logic, as just being honest with yourself. But in reality, they are designed to pull you away from trust in Allah. And that is where the real danger lies. Because Shaitan does not always attack your faith directly. He weakens it gradually. He shifts your focus from Allah's power to your problems. From divine wisdom to personal fear. From trust in the unseen to obsession with what you can see and control. But here is the truth that breaks that entire illusion apart. When you stop trusting Allah, you start trusting your fears. You begin to treat worst-case scenarios as if they are guaranteed outcomes. You start believing that your limited perspective is more accurate than Allah's infinite knowledge. You carry responsibility for things that were never placed on your shoulders in the first place. And slowly, life becomes heavier, not because it is necessarily more difficult, but because you are carrying it alone in your mind. And this is why even success does not bring peace when tawakkul is missing. Because if your heart is not anchored in Allah, then everything you gain feels unstable. Everything you achieve feels temporary. Everything you build feels like it could collapse at any moment. There is no true sense of safety, because safety is no longer coming from trust, it is coming from control. But control was never meant to be your source of peace. Your heart was not designed to find calm in predicting every outcome. It was designed to find calm in surrendering to the one who already knows every outcome. That is why even when life looks perfect on the outside, a person without tawakkul can still feel unsettled inside. Without tawakkul, even blessings feel fragile. Even progress feels uncertain. Even good days carry the fear of what might go wrong next. But with tawakkul, something shifts internally. Uncertainty becomes manageable. Delays no longer feel like punishment. Hardship no longer feels like abandonment. Because the heart is no longer anchored to outcomes, it is anchored to Allah. And when the heart is anchored correctly, even unstable circumstances cannot shake it completely. So the real question is not whether you are strong enough to carry everything alone. The real question is, why are you still trying to? Because the moment you return your trust to Allah, the weight does not necessarily disappear, but it becomes bearable. The pressure does not vanish, but it no longer breaks you. And slowly, the heart begins to experience something it has been searching for all along, not control, not certainty, not guarantees. But peace. There are moments in history that were never meant to be seen as ordinary events. They were designed to reshape how the human mind understands impossibility. Because when you reflect on the lives of the prophets, you begin to notice a pattern that repeats itself again and again. The point where everything looks lost is often the exact point where Allah's help begins to appear in ways no one could have predicted. Look at Prophet Musa, as he reached a moment where logic had no answer left. In front of him was the sea, vast, still, and completely blocking any path forward. Behind him was Pharaoh's army, closing in with certainty and power. There was no hidden route, no backup plan, no visible escape. From a purely human perspective, the situation was final. The mind would naturally assume that this is where everything ends. But in that moment, something different happened in his. Instead of panic taking over, certainty remained. He said with calm conviction, "Indeed, my Lord is with me, He will guide me." It was not a statement based on what he could see, it was a statement based on who he trusted. And then, what followed defied every expectation. The sea split, not before danger arrived, not after safety was guaranteed, but right in the middle of the impossible. The barrier that seemed like an end became a pathway. The water that symbolized destruction became the very means of salvation. What looked like a dead end was revealed to be a hidden route that only Allah could open. And then there is Prophet Ibrahim, as his test came in a different form, but the weight of it was no less severe. He was thrown into fire, not approached cautiously, not surrounded by protection, but cast into it as an act of intended destruction. A fire so intense that no human strength could stand near it. Every logical outcome pointed toward complete loss. Yet what happened next was not destruction. Allah commanded the fire, "Be coolness and safety for Ibrahim." And the fire obeyed. The very thing created to burn became a source of peace. The flames remained flames, yet their effect was completely removed by the command of the one who controls all things. The instrument of harm became an instrument of safety, not because the situation changed on its own, but because Allah's will overrides every law we assume is fixed. These are not just historical narratives meant to be admired from a distance. They are living principles meant to reshape how you interpret your own moments of fear, uncertainty, and blockage. Because in your life too, there will be moments where the mind reaches its limit. Where every option appears closed. Where every direction feels blocked. Where effort no longer produces visible results, and the heart begins to quietly conclude, there is no way out. But that conclusion is based only on what you can see. And what you can see is not the full reality. The stories of Musa, and Ibrahim, are not reminders that life will always be easy. They are reminders that ease does not depend on visible possibilities. It depends on divine intervention. It depends on the one who is not limited by oceans, armies, fire, or any force that appears final to human perception. So when your situation feels like a closed sea in front of you, or a fire surrounding you from every side, you are being reminded of something crucial. Your vision is limited, but your Lord is not. What looks like an end may simply be a stage where something unseen is about to unfold. What feels like blockage may actually be positioning. What feels like destruction may actually be protection in a form you have not yet understood. And this is why you cannot let your current moment become your final judgment on your life. Because delays are not denials. Closed doors are not conclusions. Impossible situations are not endings. They are simply points in the story where human certainty stops, and divine help begins to reveal itself. Your story is still unfolding, and the one writing it has already shown, through fire and sea, that nothing is beyond his command. True trust in Allah is not something that appears suddenly in a moment of inspiration or emotional intensity. It is not a switch that flips in the heart, nor a feeling that stays constant without effort. Rather, it is something that is built slowly, quietly, and repeatedly through life itself. It is shaped in the moments when you are confused, when you are tired, when you don't understand what is happening, and yet you still find yourself turning back to Allah again and again. It begins with something as simple, yet as powerful, as strengthening your salah. Because salah is not just a ritual or an obligation that is performed out of routine, it is a direct connection between you and your Lord. It is the moment where everything that feels scattered in your life is gathered and placed before the one who already knows it all. When your mind is overwhelmed and your heart feels heavy, salah becomes the place where you are no longer required to carry anything alone. You stand, not as someone who has everything figured out, but as someone who is simply returning. And in that return, something within you begins to soften. Over time, salah teaches your heart a different kind of dependence. Instead of relying on outcomes, situations, or people, you begin to rely on Allah. Even if your circumstances do not change immediately, something within you starts to shift. You are no longer as easily shaken by uncertainty, because you have a place to return to every time uncertainty rises. Alongside salah comes the practice of sincere dua, not the kind of dua that is rushed or repeated without feeling, but the kind where your heart is fully present. Dua is where you speak without filters, without pretending, without needing perfect words or structured sentences. It is where you admit your weakness openly and ask with honesty, even if what you are asking feels far away or impossible. And even when you do not see immediate change, dua is never lost. It is not ignored, it is always heard, and it always has an effect, sometimes in your circumstances, and sometimes in your heart. Then there is reflection, looking back at your life with sincerity. Because if you pause and examine your past, you will find moments where you were certain you would not make it through, yet you did. Moments where everything felt like it was falling apart, yet somehow it was held together in ways you did not understand at the time. At that moment, you may have called it luck, timing, or coincidence. But now, when you look back with clarity, you begin to see something deeper. Allah was carrying you in ways you could not see. And the one who carried you then is the same one carrying you now. Another important step is learning to release the illusion of control. This is often the most difficult part, because the human heart naturally seeks safety and control. It feels secure when it believes it can predict, manage, or shape every outcome. But in reality, this sense of control is fragile. The more you cling to it, the heavier your heart becomes. You begin to feel responsible for everything, and that responsibility slowly turns into anxiety. You start carrying burdens that were never meant to rest on your shoulders. True peace begins when you accept that your role is effort, not outcome. You act, you try, you take steps forward, but the results are not yours to decide. They have always been in the hands of Allah. And when this understanding settles deeply into the heart, something changes. The weight you were carrying does not disappear completely, but it no longer crushes you in the same way. You begin to breathe differently, think differently, and respond to life with more calm. Because the truth is simple. The more you try to control everything, the more anxious you become. But the more you surrender what you cannot control, the lighter your heart becomes. And in the middle of all of this, there is a truth that you must never forget. If Allah handled your past, He can handle your future. This is not just a comforting idea meant to calm you in difficult moments. It is something you can verify through your own life. You are already living proof that Allah has carried you through situations you once thought were impossible. You are evidence that He guided you through confusion, protected you in ways you didn't recognize at the time, and brought you out of difficulties you assumed would break you. So what makes you think your future is outside of His control? Consistency is what matters here. Not perfection, not sudden transformation, not becoming someone who never struggles again, but returning, again and again and again. Even when you fall, even when you forget, even when you feel distant. Coming back to Allah is what builds trust, not never having doubts at all. Because real trust is not built by never struggling. It is built by never stopping the return. There is something that quietly keeps many hearts awake at night. It doesn't always have a clear name, but it is deeply familiar. Sometimes it is worry about the future, what will happen tomorrow, how things will unfold, whether life will become easier or more difficult. Sometimes it is regret from the past, moments replaying again and again in the mind, things you wish you had done differently. Sometimes it is fear of losing what you already have. And sometimes it is just a heaviness that cannot be explained in words, only felt in silence. You lie down, you close your eyes, but your thoughts refuse to stop. The world becomes quiet, but your mind becomes louder. And in those moments, it can feel like you are carrying everything alone, like no one sees the weight you are holding inside. But there is a truth you need to hear in those exact moments. That thing keeping you awake at night, Allah already knows it. Before the thought even formed in your mind, He was already aware of it. Before the fear became heavy in your chest, it was already encompassed by His knowledge and His control. Nothing you are experiencing is hidden from Him, not a single worry, not a single concern, not a single emotion that you could not even put into words. Even the pain you never told anyone, Allah heard it, not only the words you managed to say in your dua, but also the feelings you couldn't explain. The moments you stayed silent because you didn't know how to express what you were going through. The nights where tears came without explanation. The thoughts you buried deep inside because you didn't want anyone to see how heavy things really felt. Even when you could not understand yourself, Allah understood you completely. And this is where the begins to soften again. Because the feeling of being alone is powerful, but it is not the truth. Loneliness is something you feel, but it is not something you are actually living in reality. You were never truly alone, not in your confusion, not in your weakness, not in your silent battles that no one else noticed. You were always known, and when this understanding begins to settle in the heart, something shifts. The weight of isolation starts to break. The belief that you are unsupported begins to fade. You stop seeing yourself as someone abandoned in uncertainty, and instead begin to recognize that you are someone being seen, guided, and carried, even when you cannot feel it. Because even when nothing around you appears to be changing, something is still happening beyond what you can see. Allah is working behind the scenes, even when everything looks still to you. Human vision is limited to outcomes, but divine wisdom is not. Just because you do not see results yet does not mean nothing is being arranged. Just because doors are still closed does not mean they will remain closed forever. Just because you do not understand the purpose of a delay does not mean there is no purpose behind it. There is a reality unfolding beyond your awareness. A plan being shaped with precision. A mercy operating in silence. A timing that is not random, but perfectly measured. And while you are sitting in uncertainty, trying to understand what comes next, something far greater is already in motion. Allah is already arranging what you are waiting for. So even in this moment, in your thoughts, in your silence, in your uncertainty, hold on to this truth with certainty. You are seen, you are known, and you are never forgotten. At the end of everything you have heard, after all the pain, the waiting, the confusion, and the unanswered questions, there is one truth that remains in every situation, every test, and every moment of your life. Trust Allah, even when it doesn't make sense. Trust Him when the doors are open, and trust Him even more when they are closed. Trust Him when things are moving forward, and trust Him when everything feels stuck. Trust Him when your heart feels strong, and trust Him when your heart feels like it is barely holding on. Because your understanding is limited, but His wisdom is infinite. There will be moments in life where nothing around you explains what is happening. Where your plans don't match your reality. Where your efforts don't seem to bring results. Where your heart keeps asking, why, and silence feels like the only answer. But silence from your perspective is not absence from Allah's side. What feels delayed to you is never forgotten by Him. And there will come a day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but a day that is already written, when everything will make sense. You will look back at moments that once confused you, and you will realize they were protecting you. You will remember delays that once frustrated you, and you will see they were guiding you. You will revisit pain that once broke your heart, and you will understand it was shaping you into someone stronger, calmer, and closer to Him. Because Allah never abandons a heart that turns to Him. Not a single sincere turning back is ever wasted. Not a single tear is unseen. Not a single dua is unheard. Even when the answer is not immediate, it is never absent. It is simply unfolding in a way that is wiser than what you asked for, and more precise than what you imagined. And if this message has touched something inside you, don't let it end here. Don't let it pass as just words you heard and forgot. Because the real weight of guidance is not in hearing, it is in what you do after hearing. Real change does not always begin with circumstances shifting. Sometimes it begins with something quieter, deeper, and more powerful, a shift in your heart. The way you interpret your struggles. The way you speak to Allah. The way you carry what you cannot control. And right now, in this moment, you are being given an opportunity, not to fix everything instantly, but to change how you face everything from this point forward. To stop carrying what was never meant for you alone. To stop letting fear speak louder than faith. To start returning, again and again, no matter how many times you feel distant. So pause for a moment, not to escape your life, but to reconnect with the one who is already guiding it. And if your heart is ready, say it quietly, sincerely, without pressure, but with truth. Ya Allah, I trust you.